You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
Terminó Axel Schwarzenegger.
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Welcome to Soccer Today. I'm Duane Rollins, no longer in Montreal. I'm in Toronto after a very whirlwind 36 hours. We spent a lot of time in Montreal, actually. We took our time back yesterday, had breakfast at a Westmount diner that's been there for 100 years.
Where did you go?
Shea something. Everything's Shea something in Montreal, though, isn't it?
Well, Shea just means like apostrophe S. So, so that's pretty much where did you went. So.
No, it was like a 97-year-old diner. It was in Westmount. It was very, very English. It felt like I was still in Toronto, but at any rate, it was quite good. The omelet was wonderful. Stopped at a restaurant in Napanee, Ontario on the way home too, called the Riverview, which I highly recommend.
That did look pretty good. Watching your social media, Duane, that did look pretty nice on the terrace there with the trees and the yeah. But you know what? Looking at your social media, I'm craving some soft lemonade right now.
Oh, that was so good. The Minute Maid soft lemonade. We found that at the truck stop, like the where you stop on the highway. Yeah, and I was like, I was in the bathroom actually, not TMI here, but I was looking above the urinals where they have the advertisement. I'm like, I need that. And I tracked it down, and sure enough, I had some soft lemonade. They had 3 different flavors. They had an orange lemonade, they had a strawberry lemonade, and they just had the straight lemonade. I went with the straight lemonade.
So speaking of sour and lemonade, Duane, early this morning, something happened. We did not have this on our radar, but unfortunately, it goes with the talk that we want to talk about. Larin of Orlando City SC and the Canadian national team has been arrested at 2:30 this morning for DUI in Orlando.
Yeah, and look, it's not so much, and as I said today in my social media feed, he wasn't tipsy or drunk. He was hammered. He blew
Here, let me read it, Duane, because I think it's worth noting. When he was pulled over, this is on the report from the
Florida
police officer. Yeah, exactly. When he was pulled over, Larin was driving on the wrong side of Orange Avenue in downtown Orlando, troopers said. Larin was stopped around 2:30 a.m. Thursday by Florida Highway Patrol trooper who spotted his Cadillac entering Orange Avenue from the South Ivanhoe Boulevard ramp in the wrong direction, according to an arrest report. As Larin came to a stop, someone driving a Mercedes was able to stop in time to prevent a head-on crash, according to the arrest report.
Yeah, yikes. Yeah, he blew 1.82. To give the little perspective on that, the legal limit here in Ontario, I don't know what it is in Florida, but the legal limit here in Ontario is 0.8.
Here is 0.08 in Ontario. It's 0.05 in Quebec now. It used to be 0.08. In Florida is 0.08 and 0.182. When you look at it, it's twice. It's over twice the amount that is a legal limit. So that's kind of insane.
No, that's like blind drunk. That's like, and he's a big boy too, right? So the amount of alcohol that he would have had to consume to get there, and we all, with the caveat, guilty until proven innocent and all that, or innocent until proven guilty, I meant to say there, and all that sort of jazz. Obviously, he's due his due process, but when you blow that high and you're going the wrong way on a highway, it's a little hard to understand what the defense of that is. And
I'm kind of happy that it was on a Thursday, Wednesday to Thursday, early in the morning, that there wasn't an accident. There wasn't anybody injured. But it could have happened. Like, it was just a few meters from happening, according to the police officers in the report. And that is what brings me to this question. Is it a one-off? Is it the first time it happens and he got caught? Or is it symptomatic of maybe his lifestyle? And that's where my focus is going right now.
Yeah, look, and I don't think it's completely fair for us to assume that it's not a one-off,
I
but at the
agree,
same time,
but it's both sides, right? Who are
yeah.
it's not just the arrest, it's the circumstances, and it does raise questions that will need to be answered if you are a member of the front office of Orlando.
No, precisely. And here's a guy that is very much looking to make a transfer to overseas, and how does that impact that? Because it's going to be looked at by a potential buying team as an issue. They're going to want to know too. And I mean, if it's a one-off, if it happened, that's pretty drunk, as I said, and it's a pretty big mistake. And there's going to be a consequence to it, I'm sure. But still, it's going to make this about soccer for a second. It's going to hurt him that way, and it might make it more difficult for him to get that transfer overseas, or even to get a DP contract, because Orlando might be looking at it now, going, well, I don't know, Kyle. What's up with that? Because it's tarnishing the reputation of Orlando. It's tarnishing the reputation of MLS. It's tarnishing the reputation of the Canadian national team program, and that's begs the question what they're going to do, how they're going to react to this as well.
And he took the loss against Miami quite big, apparently. And we'll talk about this in the second segment. But where do you go from here? Right now, he was booked in Orange County Jail. He took 2 breathalyzers after being taken into custody. The first one was 0.179, and the second one, 0.182, which doesn't necessarily mean anything. There's a margin for errors in those type of tests. But if it's a little bit higher, the second test means that your consumption of alcohol was just stopped just before you took your car, and after you got arrested, it continued to climb. Means you just digested that. It's not good for Kyle Larin, not good for Orlando City, and not good for Canadian soccer, like you mentioned.
Well, and look, there's legal ramifications as well. If he is convicted of a DUI, and it certainly seems like the evidence might be there, then he's going to have difficulty crossing borders and so on and so forth. They can get around that. Lots of athletes have dealt with this in the past, and they will find a way around that, but it complicates things. It complicates things on an international level too. This is just not a good situation. And that is, obviously, we're focusing on the soccer side of things, which always seems a little crass to me, but nonetheless, it certainly is the focus of our show. So it is relevant in this case. I did a poll this morning, just 10 minutes before the show, and this shows how much interest there is in this and sort of intrigue there isn't in this. There's been 136 votes already, and the question was simply, should Kyle Larin be suspended by the Canadian men's national team for the Gold Cup? Should he represent Canada in the Gold Cup in light of these charges? And it's split right down the middle right now, slightly on the no side, 51% to 49%, but that tells you how dividing this is. DUIs are no laughing matter, obviously. They're a dangerous thing, and there's a reason that it's illegal, and it's a reason that a lot of people fight really hard to make sure that people are held accountable for them. It's unfortunate because, if Kyle Larin were suspended for the Canadian men's national team program for the Gold Cup, that's going to hurt our chances. There's no doubt about that. But the question is, ethically speaking, should he be? And I don't know quite where the answer is there, because I do believe in due process, and I do believe, strongly that people deserve second chances in life. But I also believe that people need to be held accountable for their actions in life. And that's, par for the course here, whether missing the Gold Cup, which it wouldn't be the end of the world from a Canadian perspective, but might send a message that he needs to get this in order. It's got to, I feel for a lot of people that have, I've talked to Kyle Larin before. He's very soft-spoken. He's very polite in interview situations. And that doesn't necessarily tell you much about him at all, really. I mean, I don't pretend to know him based on the 3 or 4 conversations I've had with him, but certainly it does not mesh with the perception that you get from talking with him. And hopefully this was just a really bad mistake. Sometimes when you get really drunk, you do dumb things. We all know that. Anyone who's drank at all in their life has probably done a stupid thing when they're drunk. This is just a really dangerous, stupid thing. And as people have said, you probably could have afforded an Uber there, dude. So, God, not a good situation, Kevin.
No, exactly. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on the ramification on Kyle Larin, on his career. If he's arrested, and you can go to jail for that, and we'll see where it goes from here. We'll see if is indicative of anything with this opt-out. If it's a one-off, it's kind of interesting too, because it's third season of Major League Soccer. Results have been okay, but not necessarily up according to expectations. And sometimes you have to look deeper than the play, and it goes with the lifestyle, nutrition, and everything. So that will be something to keep an eye on if Larin wants to eventually move to Europe. That could be a bad spot in his resume. So it's important to keep an eye forward for this kind of thing and make sure that it doesn't happen, and make sure that the community knows that it was a mistake that he made. Duane, speaking of moving on, Canada's national team played a game Tuesday night, Stade Saputo, and you were there. It was a victory. We haven't seen this in a while, where Canada scored, young players make a big impact in that game. What did you think of Davies and Jackson?
Yeah, look, to be clear, I was there as a fan. I was enjoying myself. So my perception of it was from behind the goal with the Voyageurs and the very small Voyageurs section. We'll touch on that real quickly after this. But
you could go to my Facebook feed and my Instagram to actually see pictures, and you could probably spot out Duane in that Voyageurs section too.
Yeah, and I was enjoying myself and met a few Montreal friends that I hadn't met before. So it's good to see them. But look, I thought that, Jackson Mel, it's good for him to get the goal at the end there for sure in front of the home crowd. Nice for Bernier to get the send off as well, taking him out with 5 minutes to go to allow the crowd that was there to give him the ovation. Samuel Piette as well, with a large group of people in the stands. So it was good in that way. It was a frustrating game though. Let's not kid ourselves when you're playing a nation that's smaller than, much smaller. It's the size of Kingston, basically. It was much smaller than the city we're playing in. And to have, that much of a huff and puff and get it done sort of situation. Now, with Carousel, they have a lot of Dutch nationals that they bring over, so I don't think they're as bad as maybe the size of the island would suggest, but it still shouldn't have been as much effort as it was, and that certainly dictated most of the post-match coverage was how much of a struggle it was to get past this country. But as I said, this is a country that did qualify for the Gold Cup. That does have a lot of Dutch nationals, so we shouldn't probably dismiss a win too much, because sometimes you just need to get wins, and Canada desperately needs wins. It is currently the 15th ranked country in CONCACAF. Canada is. They need to get ranking points to get up there for this League of Nations thing. We don't want to be, stuck in the third tier or something when it starts. So every bit of win it matters, I think.
Now we're moving on to the Gold Cup. Patrice Bernier looks like he's going to have a big role in the team, like the Guzman of the last few years type of role, where he will be the captain. He will be the veteran voice on the field to guide the young crops, to guide, well, we'll see about Larin, but to guide Davies, to guide other young players for the national team.
Yeah, no, and that's a good thing, and I like the fact that they're keeping these guys around. Patrice Bernier did an interview this week as well, where he once again referenced that he's reconsidering the retirement at the end of the year situation. We're going to call him the Brett Favre of Canadian soccer in a minute, but that's okay. We'd like to keep Patrice around a while as long as he can contribute, and I think that that's a good thing nonetheless. And look, it's just as I said, in the past we've been a little bit too quick to sort of move past these guys, and maybe this is a segue into the last tiny little bit of conversation we'll have on this game, and that revolving around the attendance. And there has been, suggestions in the past that the Quebec players and Bernier himself were overlooked for many years when they shouldn't have been. And that in turn has led to a feeling in Montreal and Quebec that the national team is not something that they need to pay attention to. And look, when it comes to the attendance, Kevin, if I don't know if you spoke about this or not, but I real quickly, I think we all need to chill a little bit here and realize who they were playing. It was a midweek game.
6,000 people. It's like the third of the stadium when you think about it. So it did look bad because they actually tarped off some section to have people closer together. So when you had pictures of people and you didn't have the entire picture, it wasn't too bad. If you go to my actual feed, I took a picture panorama of the entire stadium, and was about 6,000 people. But the thing is, Duane, not just that. I talked about the consciousness. The Canadian men's national team is not in the consciousness of the Montreal soccer fan. It's not talked about on TV. It's not talked about on the radio. It's not really a subject of conversation between fans. It's there and there. For the longest time, we never had players from Montreal barely playing for the national team, and it was always French, and it was always talked about barely. So you could not necessarily have that hype or that fan base grow in the actual province, in the market here, because they're not necessarily a subject of conversations. If that changes, I do expect more people to show up. I think it's that easy. I think it's up to people like us. We continue to talk about the national team, and our audience found us because of that a long time ago. But I think it has to be the same for mainstream media. They need to talk a bit more about Canada the way they talk about the U.S. men's national team or other international programs. It's all about perception. If you put it on a pedestal and you treat it like it's supposed to be treated, well, people will show up.
Yeah, look, just quickly on this, we'll end it after this. I was at the World Cup qualifiers in Toronto, the ones that were in the early rounds, and they were getting about 8,000 to 9,000, and that's a little bit more than what we were seeing in Montreal for that game. But that's a World Cup qualifier, and Toronto had a history of years of trying to build that audience, and people were ripping Toronto for those crowds, especially out west, where they have never had to play one of these games out in Vancouver in recent years. And I'll just say that to you carefully, Vancouver fans, that you shouldn't throw your rocks in your glass house because you don't know how hard it is to sell those games. If you consistently play in a market, and I think with this CONCACAF League of Nations idea that's supposedly going to start next year, you will be seeing more games consistently played in the three big markets in Canada, and hopefully we can get into other markets too. I'd like to be in Winnipeg. I'd like to be in Ottawa. I'd like to be in Hamilton. I think they need to get into those places, Ottawa in particular. They haven't played a national team game in Ottawa since 1987. That's the capital of the country. That seems ridiculous at any rate. And once you get in there a little bit more often, then I think we're going to see those crowds get up a little bit higher. But there's still, when you're playing a country like that midweek, come on, man. We're not England. We're not Italy. We're not going to sell that stadium out. I think that 6,000 is
England and Italy, Duane. Go on a friendly against a third, fourth tier type of opponent. I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing we're not talking about here. Different scale. Maybe there's going to be 18,000 out of a 60, 80,000 stadium, and it will look the same, right? So we have sometimes to take a look closer at others, and not why are we so quick to bash on each other here, right? All right. Well, look at each other. It's the same everywhere. It's a friendly midweek. What do you expect? 100,000 people filling the Big O to cheer on Canada? Come on, you have to be realistic at some point.
Yeah, and you know what? I was talking to one of the people that I met in the city, Elizabeth. You know her from Twitter probably, and she was trying to defend her city as she's apt to do. And I was saying, look, let's focus on the people that are here. It was her first national team game. She's not someone who's before focused on Canada, but she was there, right? Like, that's what I want to focus on, the growth one by one. When we were in Bar 99 before the game, Jamie McLeod made a whole bunch of T-shirts out that he was giving for free, which said support Canadian soccer, or the supporters of Canadian soccer. And it was written in French, and it was on blue T-shirts as well, because we were trying to do a little nod to Montreal. And the Montreal fans that came in wearing Impact shirts saw these things and went, you know what, I'm going to put this on instead. And it was one by one, sort of that interaction that leads to the growth of this, because people want to feel like they're part of the situation. And something as simple as writing the message in French and having them on blue Montreal shirts does that sort of stuff.
So what we're saying is that instead of complaining about the national team attendance, next time they come around, you bring a friend to that game. Maybe that attendance won't be, according to some doubters, shameful. So how about you bring somebody to the game? How about you do something about it and not just complain about it?
Yeah, and last thought on that. I stood with our Ottawa friends. There was about 6 of them from Ottawa that came down. I was in a car of 4 guys, including myself, from Toronto that drove down to this game. There was at least 3 people from Saskatchewan that were at this game.
Yeah, they came down. Hey, what's up, Jeff?
Yeah, well, Rob was there. Jeff had to stay back in Saskatchewan. We called him from the bar. Anyway, look. That's what I want to focus on, the people that do make the effort rather than the ones that don't. And the ones that do make the effort are going to try and sell this one by one. And if you're out there listening and you want to go to a game next time and you're worried about attendance, like Kevin said, bring a friend. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll end with a little U.S. Open talk, and maybe we'll touch on the U.S. men, because we didn't have a chance to talk about that either.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Welcome back. Quick update on the Kyle Larin suspended poll that I have. It's still pretty much running at 50-50. 52% no, 48% yes, with 161 votes as we speak here. This has only been up for 15 minutes, so it's obviously getting people to think and talk about it. Kevin, Cincinnati, 30,000.
Wow. The images, the panorama images of that game is quite impressive. The first ever Ohio Derby, and Cincinnati won it 1-0. Great crowd, great atmosphere. This was fun to take a look at.
Yeah, look, and it's obviously a bit of a shot in the arm for the Cincinnati MLS bid.
It's a shot across the bow, I think, for the other bids.
Yeah, look, we brought 30,000 out to these games, and we've talked about this a lot, and I do wonder whether MLS tends to hold off trying to get into what they might consider sexier markets or bigger markets anyway, but they ultimately have their hand forced by crowds, and they've done it before. I don't think they wanted to go to Portland. If you think back to that one, way back when, 2011, that was really, if you look at those bids, there were other cities in there that were bigger, that were better media markets, but the Portland fans just kept showing up in big numbers like they do now and like they did then. And eventually MLS had to look at them and had to bring them in. And the same thing I think might be happening with Cincinnati, which is a market that came completely out of left field just 2 years ago. That's my only caveat with them, is how quickly they rose from literally nothing. And they had teams there before that didn't really do much. And then suddenly they just became, this massive story that we continue to see. And let's not ignore the fact that they won the game too. And that's not very good for Columbus.
That's what I'm impressed. 1-0, but there's some sense yesterday that some Major League Soccer team did not take this competition seriously. And I guess it is a little something, but it was surprising. There's Miami result against Orlando as well. And Orlando fans were not happy. And when they wake up this morning, they'll be even less happy.
Yeah, but not a good 24 hours for Orlando. No.
Sorry, Gareth. Apologies to Gareth, one of our listeners in Orlando. But no, you're right. Cincinnati, that win, 1-0. They're moving on to the tournament. They're making an impression. We have seen it last year as well in the USL with their debut. They had 24,000, crowds of 27, and other big numbers throughout the year. But this is a benchmark right now. They did a competitive game against a Major League Soccer team, and the crowd responded with 30,000 people. I think it's their audition to see, look, if we get Major League Soccer team opposition, we're going to get a lot of fans all the time. And I think that's was they were trying to demonstrate last night.
Yeah, no, and there was a good crowd from Columbus that drove down too, and I think that's part of this as well. Columbus is a city that, because of where they're situated, they don't really have a lot of natural rivals. They can go to Chicago fairly easily. They can come up here relatively easy if you take the border out of the equivalent, but there's still long drives. To have something in their own state, I think, would be quite useful for them. Cincinnati, I kind of like this. The more I think about it, the more I really like the idea of MLS going into markets that don't have a ton of pro sports there already. Cincinnati already, obviously, I'm trying to say, has the Bengals, and that's a huge team. I imagine they dwarf everything else. There's a lot of college there too, which there isn't a lot of these cities like this in the U.S., but they would get the attention and the interest because they would be considered, one of the biggest cities or teams in the city. That's not to say they can't work in big cities. I mean, I live in one and they do quite fine here, but they're clearly the fourth team, right? Not the second team, which they might be in some of these places. So I think that is a model as well. And speaking of which, if we go across the country to the other side, we also see a big smackdown by a USL team of an MLS team, although I don't know how much RSL is an MLS team at the moment. But 4-1 for Sacramento as well, which of course is the other team that it's almost boring now to talk about Sacramento's support and success because they've been doing it for so long.
No, yeah, absolutely. And you had the Miami result, Wayne. That was surprising to me too. Miami team coached by Alessandro Nonesta. It's an ASL. It's kind of weird to handicap their team this year, but they pulled it off. That surprise that they came to Orlando, they came ready, and they won 3-1. This is actually an impressive victory for Miami FC.
Yeah, Orlando's lineup was a little left to be desired, and the fans there, if you're looking at their reaction, were not very happy with it because they had a history in that competition going back into their USL days where they did take it seriously. They did try and make, send notifications, send notice, so to speak, that they were to believe were something important, something bigger than what they were maybe playing at back then. And then for them to sort of just throw this away didn't rub them a long way a little bit, we'll say. And as I said a moment ago, it was not a very good 24-hour period for Orlando. But look, the competition, I think at some point, I get why fans, like hardcore fans, are upset when their team does not take U.S. Open Cup seriously, or Voyageurs Cup up here in Canada, which is less of a problem because I think the rivalry nature of the Voyageurs Cup requires these teams to try a little bit harder. But I get it. But at the same time, I think maybe we beat ourselves up a little bit too much sometimes, because it's pretty normal world round for teams to make choices when it comes to cup competition. And it's disappointing everywhere that it happens, but it does happen everywhere. So it's not like it's showing MLS teams to be Mickey Mouse or something. I hear stuff like that. That's nonsense. Like, have you watched a League Cup game in England lately? Come on. Like, it's normal for teams to rotate. But certainly some of the seriousness of it in the last, for some of these teams yesterday does illustrate where their priorities lie.
North Carolina with a great fight against Dynamo. They lost. Dynamo won 3-2. I think it was in PKs, so that's kind of interesting. And New England 3-0 against Rochester. Atlanta 3, Charleston 2. So there was still some. Those are great moments, right, for Charleston fans to go to Atlanta and play in the U.S. Open Cup against United. Those stories you only get in those type of tournaments, and I think it's worthwhile. I think it's as well, when you make choices, you mentioned the roster choices, rotation before those games, you kind of want to instill a challenge for your academy players. And sometimes during the lead up to the tournament, this is the carrot at the end of the stick, is look, if you're training good, you're going to be on my roster for the U.S. Open Cup, and that's a gateway to maybe having more playing minutes in Major League Soccer. So that's what's fun to see about this tournament, is young players from Major League Soccer sides to actually get a chance to play.
Yeah, no, precisely, and that can always make it fun. Three teams that are outside MLS still left in this thing. I think actually, if you look overall, include the Voyageurs Cup in that it was a decent run by the USL teams and the NASL teams too, for that matter, in terms of their performances against the top level. You include Ottawa's win over Toronto in the Voyageurs Cup. These upsets that happened yesterday, just even some of the competitive games. You mentioned North Carolina and like how competitive they played that game, right? I think that they showed well. The MLS teams are usually going to win this thing. It's been since 1999, in fact, that they have. So I suspect that will continue. But nonetheless, having three teams into the round of 8 is something to look at. It's around 8 or around 16. Just looking here quick, 16, right?
16,
no, it doesn't.
Yeah, we're going to the round of 16.
Yeah, exactly. The 5th round. At any rate, I think there was good signs here, and hopefully one of those teams could get through the quarterfinals. We'd love to see it. Anyone who loves the romance of cup competition would love to see another Rochester Rhinos, they're the Raging Rhinos back in 1999, to get to the final, Kevin. So we'll look at that quickly before we say goodbye. It's a little old now, but I did want to sort of mention the U.S.-Mexico game on Sunday and that remarkable goal by Michael Bradley and sort of what I think was a remarkable performance and turnaround by the U.S. national team, who are now sitting at 93% likelihood to qualify for the World Cup, according to some of those stats models that they do out there.
Big few days, right? They're winning against Trinidad and Tobago, and then their draw at Azteca with a great goal around the 30th minute by Michael Bradley, a chip, and it worked, and it was pinpoint perfect. And they conceded another goal later for the draw, but they get a result at Azteca, 4 points out of 6. They actually repaired the mistakes of the prior rounds in the qualification process, in the prior match day fixtures, I mean. So this is positive now, and they're back where there should have been all along.
Yeah, no, as I said, 93%. The top 3 teams look like they're pulling away right now. Be a battle to see who is able to get that 4th spot between Honduras and Panama. The bottom of the text is a little bit lacking this time, I think. But good results for the U.S. And as we said, I wasn't too surprised by this. We said that heading in. As long as they took care of the home games, then they were going to probably be fine. Now they've got this bonus point in Azteca. I think they're absolutely fine now, and they'll probably get one of those automatic qualifying positions now. And that's probably for the best. I think we all want to see the U.S. in a World Cup. It would be a bit disappointing to have them not there. They add something to the proceedings. Less than a year away to Russia, and we do have the warm-up tournament, which is going to start on Saturday. We'll be looking to preview that tomorrow. But until then, Kevin, as always, I'm going to have you say goodbye.
You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. You can find the on-demand version of every show we do here at the Sports Podcasting Network at sportspodcastingnetwork.com or on iTunes, Stitcher, FeedBurner, Podbay Player, anywhere you get your podcasts. You can find us under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Until tomorrow, as always, I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.